The question is, can we be free of our past hurts? This question comes up very often, and it's important because it affects relationships. And with disharmony and conflict in relationships, the quality of life is less, is poor. The thing is that when the mind is rooted in fear, when the mind is caught up with the content of the past, there is no freedom to live in the present. Because from past to future is the same movement. The past, as Jiddu Krishnamurti explained, modifies the present. What that means is, let's say you had a past experience of, let's say, a parent being unkind to you, not giving you emotional support or love, not giving you affection, validation, not being authentic with you, all of which can cause trauma, can cause childhood wounds. So what happens as you grow up into an adult? You retain the memory of that experience. And identified with that movement of the past, the me modifies the present. So in relationships, their perception changes. The childhood wounds get carried into adulthood. So even when somebody's, let's say your partner, your lover, your husband, wife, whoever it is, when they are expressing care or concern, or when they are contradicting you in something, immediately the past wound gets activated and the defensiveness comes up. And you may notice that for a small thing, a huge blow up, a huge reaction happens, and we explode. So this has happened with me many times. And every time it happened, it gave an insight as to what I was carrying from the past and how it was playing into adulthood. Now, this movement from past, which modifies the present from what is to what should be, because it is coming out of fear. So we start suspecting our partner, our lover, or it can be a friend or anybody. There's no trust, and we feel that we can be taken advantage of, and then we immediately jump to an imaginary future where we think now, in future, this person may hurt us, this person may harm us. So we live with constant vigil, we live in survival mode. And that begins to break apart relationships. To be present means to feel the hurt totally. Only when you feel that hurt totally, without letting your mind shame, blame the other or externalize the hurt to feel relief, then only will you be able to go into the depths of your consciousness to see what's happening. Where is the hurt originating from? And then only will it be released from the system. It may not completely take away the reactivity, but the reactions will be less. The ruptures in the relationships will be less frequent, and the repair process will be faster, which will improve the quality of relationship. But when we are stuck in survival mode, we are always afraid. We are petrified. We will think that all acts of kindness done by humans have motives, that there is something they would ask in return. And that lack of trust comes when our primary caregivers do not show us trust in the same way, do not give us the affection, the validation that we need in our early years. But with awareness, one can see that what are the roots of this hurt. So the root of this hurt ultimately is me. The me is the story. And the story is that something bad happened in my past. Therefore, I cannot trust what's happening in the present. In other words, I'm modifying the present based on what happened in the past. And that is reducing the quality of my life. That is taking away my ability to live life fully, to enjoy life fully. I'm caught up. I'm completely trapped in my own personal story. So giving total attention to the emotions is one way to release the past hurt, which means the observer has to disappear. Till there is an observer observing something, there will always be this separation between the two. And the illusion is that the observer is not separate from the observed. That's not the illusion, that's the truth. The observer is not separate from the observed. The illusion is that the observer is separate from the observed. So the one that is trying to find a solution to the past hurt is the hurt in the moment. Because if you see, when the reactivity happens, when you're saying unkind things, for example, when you feel hurt, okay, you say, I feel hurt. You're saying unkind things. Do you ever see yourself as separate from the content? No. You are the content in that moment. You are the hurt in that moment. So where is that entity, that self, that person, that mind, the separative mind, which says, I want to get rid of my past hurts? This is to be examined. So people who have done a lot of self-observation and who have been totally present with their emotions, with their feelings, with their sensation, will see that there is no separate observer of anything. And therefore, when the reactivity, when the hurt happens, when the hurt arises and the tendency to react arises, for them there is no separate person to react. Now, the mind-body organism may still react, based on default conditioning. But the thing is that reaction will not propagate in horizontal time as blame, shame, guilt, malice, spite, ill will, getting back, or resentment. That is the difference. So, for example, Nisargadatta Maharaj, we all knew, had a short temper. He would say something wild sometimes and react in the most abrasive manner. But everything was momentary. Once the moment was gone, there was no memory, no holding on to anything of the past. Therefore, he was free from the content of the past. But his organism was programmed in such a way that reactivity happened. And therefore, for many of us, the reactivity may still happen if the organism is programmed in a particular way. But if we are mindful enough, if we are aware enough of what is the mechanism, what is the split of observer and the observed, then we will notice that the reactivity and the thinking associated with it in horizontal time begins to reduce. And my teacher also said that not just that, even the reactivity in the moment begins to reduce as awareness turns more and more, as healing happens more and more. Healing not to the ego, but the healing happens. It is an impersonal process. Till the process is personal, with an observer trying to observe something, the hurt will continue to happen, and that hurt will continue to bring out the same patterns over and over again. So, to be free of the hurt is to see who at the root is getting hurt. What is the nature of that entity that is getting hurt? Why is that entity holding on to that hurt? The me is scared to be alone. The me fears that if people leave me, I will be left alone, I will die. Therefore, it wants to hold on to something. The me is a story that I did not get adequate affection and love in my childhood. From my parents, from my caretakers, from my teachers, from my friends. Therefore, if somebody leaves me or doesn't show me affection or care, then I may be distraught. I may be devastated. So there is fear at the root of it. The me is the fear. The reaction is me. So I will give you one example. One time in Delhi, I was standing in the middle of the road, and this taxi driver behind me just came honking. He was honking non-stop. And it did bring about a sudden spurt of anger in me. And this is probably a decade back. And I just, turned to him in anger and reached out to him, and I actually held him with his collar from inside the taxi. But then in that instant, something happened and the observer dropped. Therefore, I had no momentum to carry on with the reaction. And I just stood there plain blank. The taxi driver was surprised. Of course, he continued to ramble and, use expletives. But it just didn't affect me. The whole thing dropped. The observer completely dropped. There was only observation of a stimulated nervous system reacting to a stimulus. And then, all of a sudden, as the story dropped, as the observer dropped, as the me dropped, there was nothing to carry on. And of course, the man left. And I stood there smiling. I was smiling. And also, I was in awe and wonder as to what happened. I remember this experience vividly because it was such a good feeling. Now, had I reacted, or had I hit the person, or said unkind things, the ego mind the me mind would have come later on to put all the shame and blame on the self, on itself. Why did you react? You shouldn't have done that. That's the trick it plays. The separative mind. It enjoys the thrill in the moment, and then it berates you in horizontal time. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? So that didn't happen. However, I will admit that I have been reactive in many moments in my life. But again, the reactions are momentary now, and I do not have much memory or much holding on to what happened. But as I see that with deeper understanding of this mechanism, and the awareness, the reactivity is decreasing. It still is going low, but sometimes it does happen with me even now. So there's not much concern because I understand that this is an impersonal phenomena. I cannot do anything to cut off the content from my past. All I can do is just observe. So I would just say the same thing. To be free from the content of the past, just observe what is happening and allow things to unfold naturally without worrying about what is going to happen in future. That is how we stay in the present moment, and that is how our quality of life increases.